we've brought quite a few AMGs to the track in the past. V8 powered drift machines like the E63, the C63, the SLS AMG. These, however, are AMGs with a bit of a twist. That one can ferry around the family dog at light speed, and this one doesn't have a fire-breathing V8 under the bonnet, but the most powerful four-cylinder engine in the world. So it's a bit of a case of the beauty and the beast. That one is an AMG for the family, and this is an AMG for the people. But let's take them out on track to make sure that the AMG DNA is still intact. So, we are now exiting the pit lane of the BIC in the monstrous GL63 AMG. Admittedly, this car isn't exactly built for the racetrack. It does have some 2.5 tons worth of girth to get around every single corner or every one of the 16 corners of the Buddh International Circuit. But it has an AMG tag on it, so there's really not much else to do other than to bring it out on the track and see if some of that DNA is still intact. It's got the heart of an AMG. It's a monstrous fire-breathing V8. In fact, we brought the E63 AMG to the track a couple of months ago, and I completely fell in love with that car. I would choose that over my long-time favorite, the BMW M5. It just has so much character. It's just a complete hooligan, and it is a lot of fun on the racetrack. It's powered, funnily enough, by the same 5.5-liter bi-turbo V8 that's under the hood of this beast. It puts out 557 horsepower and 720 Nm of torque, and it powers this massive machine to 100 kilometers an hour in just under 5 seconds. So a couple of things that we need to do before we can even attempt to set a lap time in this thing. One is, of course, get used to the size of this massive machine at the racetrack. I don't think I've ever done a lap sitting so high in something quite as big. We brought a couple of SUVs to the track a couple of months ago, and they actually performed really well. So let's see where this takes us. I'm going to take Eco mode off, because clearly we don't need that. I'm going to put it in Sport mode and adjust the damper settings to Sport Plus. That should firm things up a little bit. I can hear a little bit of a growl as this 7-speed AMG gearbox downshifts, and hey, it moves. You got to give it that. Ooh, braking is a little tentative. It's a big machine. It turns in pretty good, actually. It's got massive, massive wheels and tires. Oof. And there's the sound of fury that's emanating from those exhausts. The first time I drove this car, I pulled up at a traffic light and I heard, whoa, get it slowed down, get it turned in, back on the power, come on. So, the first time I drove this car was a couple of months ago in Germany, and I pulled up at a traffic light and I could hear this V8 burble from an AMG, and I thought an E63 had pulled up alongside me, only to realize that that V8 burble was actually coming from under the hood. It's fast, you gotta give it that. So it's really just under braking where you feel the girth of this machine. Everywhere else it actually does really well. You can carry a surprising amount of speed through these corners. There's just tons and tons and tons of grip. How have they done that in a car that is just so massive and unwieldy? Well, it's not unwieldy, is it? It responds to the steering wheel, it responds to the throttle. Sure, it feels a little bit like I'm driving around a tiny sort of cottage around the racetrack, but it's actually doing better than I expected it to. I do wish the gearbox would give me a little bit more control. Believe it or not, is performing better than I expected it to. got a lot of get up and go. We're flying down the back straight, approaching 200 kilometers an hour. You need to get onto the gas a little bit early coming out of the corner to get this transmission to really respond when you want it to. But once it does, it just shoots forward. Alright, we're clipping apexes, climbing curbs, and we're doing it a hell of a lot higher off the ground than I'm normally used to. We're going through the Parabolica, and this is one corner that just makes even the tidiest handling cars run a little bit wide and feel a little bit heavy. And this thing, believe me, is very, very heavy, but it handles it pretty well. Something to be said for massive wheels and tires, I suppose. Now, we started out in this car because admittedly the CLA is going to be a lot better suited to the racetrack than this. But I have to tell you that I got into this car, whoa! I got into this car expecting a big tank slapper like that. No, I got into this car expecting to be a little bit underwhelmed, not really seeing the point of something so big, so massive, with so much power. But there is a point to it after all. It puts down its power pretty well. And if you do want the family dog to be ferried around at light speed, then there's little else that does the trick. I mean, you have the G55 or the G63 as it is now, which is a lot more iconic than this, but this is a really comfortable cabin. It is a beautifully leather appointed cabin, and this generation of GL, the facelifted GL that we are in right now, is so much more comfortable and so much more luxurious than the previous generation. Can you believe it? I'm going through a corner at the track in the GL63 and talking about comfort and luxury. That is how comfortable and luxurious it really is. There are some compromises, of course. You've got a car that is as big as this and as heavy as this and is actually able to put down 557 horses and 720 Nm of torque on a racetrack, which means that the ride on an everyday basis out on the road, especially on our roads, can be a little bit choppy. But as always, there's a little bit of give and take. You take some performance on this end and you give up some ride comfort at the other end. On the whole, I have to say that the engineers at Affalterbach have done an incredible job in harnessing 557 horses in a car like this. Alright, so now we are in the CLA-45 AMG. And I drove this car as well a couple of months ago in Germany, and I can tell you I have been waiting for this moment ever since. You kind of have to jump into this car without any preconceived notions of what an AMG means to you. Historically or typically, an AMG would be a massive fire-breathing engine under the bonnet, rear-wheel drive, big lurid power slides, and just an absolute muscle car. This takes all those preconceived notions and throws them out the window. This car is based on the A-Class platform, which means that really underneath what we have is a front-wheel drive hatchback. But we brought the A-Class to the track a couple of months ago, and it actually did really well. So it's a really good platform. This car has 355 horsepower and 450 Nm of torque, and that is produced from just 2 liters, 4 cylinders, turbocharged. It is a monster of an engine. In that it's small and diminutive, but it produces one heck of a punch. But this is a car that you really have to wring its neck to get the most out of it. The faster you drive it and the more you push it, the more you enjoy it. That's my kind of car. There's a nice little crackle and a burp from the exhaust every time you change up. The 7-speed gearbox responds so much better. The paddles feel really good. Of course, you're a hell of a lot closer to the ground. The brakes are just really responsive. You completely overcooked it on that corner. Alright, so we might have to calm down just a little bit. Carried way too much speed through the first corner. And really, that's what this car does. It makes you into an absolute complete hooligan, because that is when it's performing at its best. You push this car and it's just a really engaging cocktail of whirring turbo, buzzing engine, and growling exhaust. It's a really engaging experience. And the funny part is, when I first drove it a couple of months ago, I thought that it would be a little too stiff and a little too extreme, let's say, for our roads. But on driving it to the racetrack earlier today, I had the car in eco mode and I had it in comfort mode, and I have to tell you that it is extremely usable on a daily basis. More than that, it's just the right size to drive around on our cities on a daily basis. The brakes are really responsive. The steering is really responsive as well. You get the back end coming around on you just a little bit. A little bit of understeer if you push it in a little bit too fast, but it neutralizes almost immediately. This is a car that I could get used to driving every single day. A little bit earlier on the brakes there. Turn it in, clip the apex, back on the power, and it's just this absolute immediate feeling when you get onto the gas. It just lunges forward. Between 4,000 and 6,000 RPM, you touch the gas and there's just an immediate surge of power forwards. And it doesn't lead to torque steer, it doesn't lead to the balance of the chassis getting upset. It just is immediate forward momentum. It's a really hot day today, and it's getting hotter still by this fiery red CLA. With this car, AMG set out to appeal to a much wider range of people, a much wider customer base than a typical AMG machine. And there was perhaps a little bit of concern that it might dilute the AMG brand. Not from the engineers at Affalterbach, mind you, perhaps from people like me. But after having sampled this car firsthand, I have to tell you, it just feels like a proper AMG. Perhaps in a slightly different sense to the traditional hooning V8 powered rear-wheel drive AMGs of yore. But this just feels absolutely brilliantly engineered, brilliantly put together, and it is just a fantastically executed machine. It is not intimidating at all. You do have to step on the gas to access the reserves of power that this incredible 2-liter engine pumps out. But that just makes it all the more engaging. It makes it all the more fun. It makes it a much more interactive experience. And it is just a great car to pilot, whether it's on the road or it's on the racetrack. Not to mention the fact that it looks absolutely stunning, especially in this red. For a car to be able to pull off a color as bright as this, it needs to look quite as striking as this car. It's a great package.